Welcome to our 11th episode of Ask AstronEra, and I'm so happy that everybody here is enjoying these episodes of Ask AstronEra. And I'm getting so many questions, not so much in the YouTube comments, so make sure that if you have any topic in mind, you post it in the comments and I'll talk about it. I do get some topics which I don't cover because there's so much there that I have already explained in the courses, and in upcoming courses that we are planning, it's going to be covered as well. So I'm covering the topics in Ask AstronEra which are really easy for me to explain and can fit in shorter duration of time as well. And I'm glad that you guys are enjoying this and making good use of these sessions. So if you have any questions during this session, you can put them in the comment box and I'll be more than happy to answer them. As much as I know, I'm more than happy to tell that all to you guys and share it with you. So happy World Space Week to you. Actually, today is the last day of the Space Week, which is an annual festival kind of thing that all the astronomers around the globe celebrate. It's celebrated every year during 4th to 10th of October, and it marks two really interesting astronomical events. You can go on our Instagram page and check out what those important astronomical events are. So this year's theme for the World Space Week is how satellites improve our life. So I thought, why not do this session dedicated to that, even though I have so many topics in my head that I want to share with you guys. And I'd also like to tell you that we are organizing a satellite making competition. So it's going to be DIY satellite model that you're supposed to make, and you submit it to us on contact us at connectus@astronera.org, and the deadline is 17th of October. I'll type in the email ID in the comment box later so that you can send your entries. We'll post them on our social media, and there would be prize for few of the best ones out of those. So I hope you participate in this challenge and send us the DIY satellites that you'll make, and we'll be excited to see what all you make. Alright, so let's dive in today's topic, which is how do satellites improve our lives. So before we get into it, I want to clear this thing to you that when we are talking about satellites here, there are two main types of satellites. One is natural satellite and one is man-made satellite. So natural satellite of the Earth is Moon, and many other planets in our solar system also have natural satellites. But what we are talking about today is man-made satellites. So these man-made satellites are, of course, as the word says, they are made by men here, and we send them in space and they do different kind of work. So of course these satellites have various types as well. I'm talking about the man-made satellites. So there are communication satellites, there are remote sensing satellites, there are global positioning satellites which we know as GPS, and then there are navigation satellites. So these satellites are doing different kind of work and making our life better every day. We use them in our daily life, and we use them so much that we don't even understand that the satellites are improving our lives and we are using them in our day-to-day life. So right from you wake up, the first thing you do is you check your phone, and that is possible because of the satellite. You go on the internet, which is there because of the satellites. So we're going to dive into one by one these uses of the satellite, and I think I'll start with the usage that the satellites help us with is climate. So these satellites help us figure out and gather data about the temperature, precipitation, the direction of the wind, the cloud cover, and all this information can be used by various people in across the fields. For example, a person in agriculture who is a farmer can use this almost real-time data and figure out how to manage his harvest. So farmers rely heavily on this data as well that the satellites provide about the climate. Then also, I was actually using this data when I wanted to photograph comet Neowise earlier this year when the monsoon was starting. So there was going to be a lot of cloud cover. So I used this satellite data to figure out on which spot near my area was going to be clear and which direction, so that I can spot the comet and take pictures of it. So of course, astronomers also use this satellite data for amateur astronomy purposes as well. And then, you can just ask your phone, you can just say, hey Google, and ask about the weather, and you'll get to know if there's going to be a rain today and how's the weather going to be throughout the week. And that really helps you plan your day or your week, whatever it is. So talking about phones and this stuff, the second important thing that satellites does for us is the communication. So without the satellites, it would have been impossible for us to do few of the things on our phone, as I told you, like GPS. GPS satellites kind of figure out our way around the traffic and the road works, and it helps us go from one place to another really easily. And as I mentioned earlier, because of these satellites, we have internet today. So imagine, like, the first thing that we do when we wake up is check our social media and messages, and imagine not having the internet so that we could do all this stuff. And that's possible because the satellites are there providing us internet. And bringing the world together at our fingertips, of course. Then we can also use satellite phones. Many remote areas are kind of, brought in connection with us because of these satellite phones. So imagine you're just in the woods or trekking in Himalayas, and you don't have your normal cell phones network there, you don't have towers there, but you can use these satellite phones to communicate, and they help for your safety and many other purposes rather than just having communication with other people around there. So the same system is also used in airways. So, the flights also contact each other in this way, and to the ground control as well. They heavily depend on this satellite communication. Also, another thing that satellites are important for us, or we use them a lot, is for the entertainment. So many of us, or most of us I'd say, have the DTH connection now, direct to home TV satellites, right? We have dish antennas at our home, and the satellites directly send us the signals from where they are generating the TV shows, let it be sports show, let it be news, and they bring those shows at our home by sending those signals from the satellite directly to our dish antenna. And similarly, lots of radios around the globe as well work. Another thing that satellites help us in our day-to-day life is the card payment, going cashless. When you can just swipe your card in some place, these satellites, they have connection between you and your bank, or the salesman and your bank, and finally you can pay to the store because of these satellite connections. Your cards kind of get linked to the satellite, or your bank database gets linked to that. And that's why it's extremely easy for us to do the transfers with help of satellite. Then, of course, the most important, the satellites are extremely useful for space sciences. So we send lots of missions in the space, and there are different types of it. Some missions stay in the orbit around the Earth and do all this satellite stuff that I just explained to you, and some missions kind of go away and study more about the other planets and stuff like that. So these are a different kind of missions. You'll know more about these missions if you go to our website astronera.org and check out the course, the space exploration. And I have also spoken about the different types of satellites, different type of missions there. Speaking about which, I remembered that the satellites are also categorized according to their orbits. For example, there are polar satellites which only just go around the Earth pole to pole. Then there are satellites which which are geocentric or geostationary satellites. For example, these types of satellite kind of stay in one place. It seems to us that they are staying in one place amongst the stars, and they are just moving across the sky amongst the stars. Or there are types of satellites which, if for example I'm in Pune and it stays directly overhead on the zenith of Pune the whole time, no matter the day or night. So there are these types of satellite depending on their positioning and their orbits as well. So yeah, let me see. There are a few questions. If you guys have questions, let me just go through them. Srishti Borate is saying, what happens when the satellite is damaged and by chance at that time only there is then and the time there is going to happen a natural disaster in some part of the earth, then how the people living there will get warned about that? That's really interesting question. Actually, it has happened sometimes that the satellites have been down. Actually, it happens when there is a big solar flare. Because of that, all the communications kind of get stopped, and the satellites cannot communicate properly, and all the connectivity on Earth gets disturbed. Of course, fortunately, I don't think it's happened ever on the time when there's gonna be a big natural disaster here on Earth, so that they are not able to warn us or anything. But yeah, it might happen that some of the satellites might get damaged, and that's why it could disrupt the life here on the Earth. Thank you so much for your question, Shruti. For 8th standard, it's really nice question. Then Sanika is asking, how many satellites are present currently around the Earth? Oh my God, it's millions, if not millions, at least thousands, because actually there's also this concern now which coming up in the astronomers is that the sky is filled with these satellites, and each time that you send a new mission in the space, that you send a new satellite in the space, you have to understand the orbit of each of these satellites in space. Not just that, even the debris. So imagine if some disaster happens and some satellite gets damaged, their debris are just there in the space. They have nowhere to go to. They're just gonna stay there forever. And the scientists have to understand how these debris are moving there as well. So there are millions of satellites up there, and they have just scattered all across the sky. And even the new satellites that we have been launching, it's kind of getting a concerning topic for all the astronomers around the globe. The Starlink satellites which were just launched, they are also going to be a bit of concern, even though they are going to provide better internet around the globe. For lots of astronomers, it has raised some concerns that they obstruct the view of the night skies, or they are making more garbage in the space. So those issues are there. Also, talking about the uses of the satellite, the uses in space sciences, of course, is also very important, that from the Earth we cannot really observe various signals that's coming to us from the space because of the atmosphere. There is atmospheric disturbance as well. So that's why we have sent Hubble Space Telescope in the space, and many other space telescopes as well, to observe the skies in different wavelengths, and which we couldn't do from the Earth as well. So those are also kind of satellites, I'd say. So Sanika is asking another question. What happens to the outdated satellites then? Well, unfortunately, they just stay in space. I know it sounds really concerning, and it is concerning. They're just there in the space, and there were a few demonstrations where it was our country which blew up another satellite in the space. So you can maybe just come up with a way that you can either get them down here back again on the Earth, but that will of course cause a mess again on the Earth. And yeah, so they're just gonna stay in space forever even if they get out of use. And there are many of them already like that in the sky. Well, it's unfortunate that we are getting on this topic, how satellites are going to cause us problem in the future, when we are actually talking about how they are useful for our lives. So yeah, right now, I mean, you have to understand how these satellites are being used to develop our life every single day. The politicians can use it, it is used for army, they keep us safe, and it's developing our life every single day. It's making our life easier every single day. And this is one of the reasons that I argue with people when they ask me why we should study astronomy. I tell them that astronomy is involved in our day-to-day lives. If the satellite was not there, the satellites are there because of astronomy. And if the satellites weren't there, our lives would have been really hard. I mean, imagine going back about 200 years. The life then was really different, really difficult. And now we have these cell phones in our hand which have lots of apps on them. The Instagram story that I posted this morning, I wouldn't have been able to do that. This stream that I'm doing right now, I wouldn't have been able to do that if it was not for these satellites. So you have to keep in mind that there are, of course, both advantages and disadvantages. Another question by Srushti Borate is, if any satellite in a space is getting crashed on each other, then is there any exploitation in the space? Yes, of course, the debris always stay in space. As I told you a bit earlier in this talk, that the debris are gonna be there forever. If you had watched this movie Gravity, you see that in one of the first scenes, some debris kind of get crashed into their spacecraft, and that's why they have to leave the spacecraft. So those debris probably have been left there in the space in a long time back in the past, and they're still wandering there, and they hit the new spacecraft, which gets hurt. So yeah, these debris are always going to be there. So anyway, again, let me remind you about these two important things. One is that we are having this competition and you must submit your entries for it about DIY satellites. Send them to connectus@astronera.org. I just typed that in, so just send your images on this email ID. And oh, I see another question. So one satellite is programmed just for one purpose, or they are multi-purpose? Well, it depends on various missions. So usually what happens is that when we send satellites in space, there might be one satellite which have different instruments to gather various kinds of data. But also there are few satellites which are dedicated to having only one type of data. For example, the GPS, they do not really have any more work than gathering the data about the commute here on the Earth. So it really depends on various missions and various countries. Those are sending these satellites in space and what is their use. Anyway, another thing before this talk ends that I want to tell you guys is that from next Sunday, we are going to have new sessions, new Astro stream with my friend from Turkey. His name is Özgür, and he is going to talk about high energy universe. So I know that you guys are curious about it, but I want you to know all about it from his own talk. So do join in. We are going to roll out the registration soon. For this particular course with us, you're gonna have to register compulsory, and then we'll send you a link specifically, and then you can join in his sessions. Also tomorrow is going to be last session with Dr. Rayot Abramovich. So you can join her session tomorrow at 6 in the evening. So I'll see you tomorrow and in next AstronEra, Ask AstronEra session. So until then, clear skies.